Change the Culture, a podcast dedicated to preventing and reducing interpersonal violence through empowerment self-defense. Studies have shown that 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men, and 1 in 5 children experience interpersonal violence in their lifetime, and isolation caused by the pandemic has increased incidence of domestic violence by more than 30%. This is why we are here. My name is Annie Orenstein, and today on the show, we have Arlene Limas.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Arlene Limas made history in 1988 when she became the first American, the first female to win a gold medal at the 24th Olympic Games in Seoul, Korea, in the sport of Taekwondo. In May of 1993, Arlene opened her own school, Kix Martial Arts, located in Stafford, Virginia, breaking the glass ceiling for other women. Arlene seeks to advocate for personal safety and empower entire corporations in her role as the CEO of PAVE Prevention. Her vision is to connect high-level programming with corporations and organizations addressing counterproductive work behaviors that may lead to low productivity, tardiness, absenteeism, and high turnover. PAVE's evidence-based trauma-informed programming will empower employees and members with the tools for better performance, stronger engagement, and a healthier work culture. So welcome again, Arlene. Tell us how you got to Taekwondo and where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up in Chicago, went through high school and university here, and I am the youngest. I'm the baby of the family. I have 4 older brothers and 2 older sisters of a blended family. And my brothers all did martial arts at one time or another. And my father was a boxer when he was younger. And as the baby, you just want to do what your older siblings are doing. And so I had the opportunity to start in martial arts at the age of 5. And, for me in the beginning, it was just doing what my brothers were doing. I wanted to be with them. And I was the only female in the school, and I was the only non-adult. So it was all men, and then this little mascot, Arlene, running around, learning how to punch and kick. And yeah, that's how I started here in Chicago. My first style that I started was Shaolin Kung Fu. But I love martial arts in general. I've studied many different martial arts and still consider myself a student of martial arts. So that's 51 years of training. 51 years I've been involved with martial arts. That's how I got started.
Wow. And what was it like? When did you decide that you wanted to go for a gold? How does that happen?
Well, I mean,
definitely by starting young.
Well, for me, I loved martial arts right off the bat, and I took to it. I was successful at it. Started competing in tournaments at 7, 8 years old, local tournaments, and being in all boys divisions and having success. And then that opened up to, instead of just competing in Chicago, let's go to Milwaukee, or let's go to Cleveland, let's go to Michigan. So kind of establishing a region for me to compete in, and had success there. And then, you know what? There's a tournament in California. We think you could really have a chance at winning. So fly all the way to California, and that's just how it progressed. So locally, regionally, and then nationally. And there was a circuit at the time, competition circuit called NASCA, National American Sport Karate Association. And I became very competitive in that. I was considered the #1 female fighter in North America. It was at some point I felt like, okay, I've done everything I'm supposed to do in sport martial arts. I'm successful in other sports, basketball and softball in high school. Maybe it's time to retire from martial arts. And right around that same time, 18, 19 years old, it was announced that Taekwondo was going to be in the Olympics. I was like, wow. I had dreamed about being in the Olympics as a kid, watching Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci and Mary Lou Retton. I mean, it was just now something that I was good at was going to be in the Olympic Games. So I pivoted immediately and, changed styles to learn the Taekwondo, the sport Taekwondo game. And made a run at it, made the national team and the Olympic team, made the national collegiate team in late 86, won the World University Games in 87, and then made the
Wow.
Olympic team in 88.
And did you feel a lot of pressure to get to there?
You know, I think because I had competed so much as a kid, I mean, really, I was competing 40 times a year in local tournaments.
Wow.
Almost every weekend I was competing somewhere. So I just came with so much more ring experience than any of my opponents or my peers when it came to Olympic
Mhm.
stuff, that I didn't really, the only pressure I felt really was political pressure, when I didn't have the background that most Taekwondo athletes had. There was political pressure to not let me compete. So that was really the only pressure that I had. I ended up
Mhm.
winning a case in arbitration for the right to compete, and try to make the US Olympic team. But that was it. Competition pressure, I just was doing what I love and it felt right.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And it's also important that sometimes having competition in a healthy way can really prepare somebody for the next level and take them around the, maybe even around, around the globe, around the country. It's amazing. And
I mean,
so,
I, I think there are so many gifts that sport gives us. I, I'm a huge advocate for young people being involved in sports. Of course, we have to keep them safe while they're doing these sports, but there's so much we learn, right? We learn what great coaches look like, what not so great
mhm,
coaches look like. We
yeah,
learn how to win, we learn how to lose, we learn how to set goals, we learn how to achieve goals, we learn how to pivot. And for me, it's just, it's been a gift to me. It really has shaped who I am. Martial arts and sports in general have really shaped the person that I've become. So I'm a huge advocate for kids doing sport at any level. It doesn't have to be at an elite level. There's just so many life lessons that are learned.
that's incredible. And so then you moved on. Before we talk about PAVE prevention, which is a very important topic, I want you to tell our audience about Power Kix Martial Arts that you started. How long ago was that you started Power Kix Martial Arts?
Well, I'll back up even more. So at around 13 years old, between 13 and 14 years old, the school that I was training at here in Chicago, for some hardships, my instructor closed. So
Mm,
I just showed up one day and my training facility was gone. And so I
mm,
came back home. My brother and I came back home, and my parents I was in, you know, the heat of competition. I was trying to be the number one female fighter in the country. And, it was really important to me. It was a major part of my life at the time. So my dad cleared out the garage and laid some mats down on the floor and hung a bag for me. And I started working out in my garage. And, garages can get very hot. So I would
mhm.
open the door halfway and do my training. The next thing I know, all the kids from the neighborhood are squatting down and sitting down and trying to peek into the garage at what I'm doing. So, few weeks later, I've got like 20 neighborhood kids that I'm training in my garage. And out of the garage, we created so many regional champions and top 10 ranked competitors. We had kickboxers fighting for the world title. So that's how
Wow.
I started teaching. I started teaching really just to have training mates and to have someone
Mhm,
train with me. And it just evolved into, I knew right away that I was good at it. I knew right away that I could learn and improve my martial arts by teaching martial arts, because it
mhm.
makes you look at things a whole different way. And yeah, so I've been teaching since I was 14, and that school evolved, and my garage evolved into storefronts in Chicago and grew and grew. And then when I moved to Virginia, and yeah, it evolved to a dream facility in Virginia, which was 12,500 square feet. It was a real training center. We had boxing programs and Krav Maga programs and cardio kickboxing, in addition to kids martial arts and sport martial arts. Yeah, it was a dream facility there. And we opened that in 1993 in Stafford, Virginia, as you mentioned. But yeah, so I've been teaching since I was 14 years old, and it really has been a huge part of my life, and it's taught me a different way. Teaching has just given me so much.
That's amazing. And you mentioned earlier on, before we got onto the podcast, that you have a student creed that everybody says before each class.
Yeah.
Would you like to share it?
Sure. It's I'm sure a lot of people think it's a little corny, but it was really important to us, and it was handed down to us. Actually, in martial arts, your master, and then your student, and then your students, they're all generations, right? And it's a lineage. It's really important in martial arts circles. And my Kung Fu lineage comes under Grandmaster Chi Wan Tai, and my Taekwondo lineage comes under Grandmaster Jun Ri. Jun Ri is believed by most to be the person who's the father of American Taekwondo. He brought it from South Korea when he came. So he started the Jun Ri Taekwondo Institute, and we were a spin-off of that. Power Kicks was a spin-off of that. And our student creed was to build true confidence through knowledge in the mind, honesty in the heart, and strength in the body, to keep friendship with one another, and to build a strong and healthy community. Never fight to achieve selfish ends, but to develop might for right. And as corny as that seems, I'd bring it up almost on a daily basis to some student or another. Remember, might for right. Yes, might for right. So, it's again, it's corny, but if you listen to it and you think about it, it's not a bad thing to live by.
Absolutely. It's a core, meaning you bring people back to your core of why are we here as a teacher, to give to your students the passion and to remind them of why they're here and what they're doing. It's so valuable to know their why. And if sometimes we forget our whys, and that's it brings them back to their core. That's amazing. So I'd love to also mention that I was privileged to take Krav Maga for 2 years, and I know, and I mentioned to you before as well, that some disciplines some people take ownership over their specific art or art form, and I'm so happy that that at your center, that kids and adults get to choose from an array of martial arts.
Yeah, I think if we're limiting ourselves to just one martial art, or convincing ourselves somehow that our martial art has all the answers, I think that's a very limited approach. My body frame works well for Taekwondo, which is predominantly kicking, because I have very long legs and I'm tall. But to try to convince someone who's a petite 5'3" person, Taekwondo might not be your sport, might not be your style, might not be the martial art. There may be some things you can take from Taekwondo that work for you, but I'm sure there are other systems that will serve your body frame and your temperament better. So, I think I think you need to have a base art. You can't, especially as a beginner, you can't go all over, because then you won't have a good foundation. But once you have your foundation, you receive your black belt, or you've trained for a substantial amount of time, I think it's really important for you then to be exposed to as much as you can. As part of our 3rd degree test at Power Kicks, I would send my students away for a week, and they would do an intensive training, like 8 hours a day of training in other martial arts. And then they'd come back.
Wow.
I think it's important that you see other arts and you pick, oh man, that works really well for me. Or man, I really like that. That's how you become the best at martial arts, I believe. I think it's important that you see a lot of different styles. I think in order for you to be the most well-rounded martial artist, you need to see other styles and what works for your body type and your temperament.
Absolutely. So now we get to move on to this next passion project as well, which is a continuation of who you are, Paved Prevention. And I read a bit about it. Tell us share with us the goals for Paved Prevention and what it's here to do and who it's meant to serve.
Sure. So, I mean, I'll back up a little bit and share with you how I got to PAVE, right? I mean, how do I go from martial arts at a 12,500 square foot facility, being one of the national coaches, traveling around coaching at high levels? How do I make the jump from there to, trying to reduce violence in the workplace? It seems kind of nutty, right? But I'll share with you, it actually, the path I took makes a lot of sense. So while I was competing in sport Taekwondo, Olympic style Taekwondo, and then later as a coach, unfortunately, our sport was riddled with predatory coaches, predatory instructors, predatory teammates. And it really became a passion of mine to advocate for safety, not only on the playing field, but off the playing field as well, and it became really evident to me that I was surrounded by high-level martial artists who had medaled at the highest levels, but they still couldn't identify inappropriate coercion. They still couldn't set a boundary with an inappropriate coach or teammate. They couldn't identify or have the skill set of situational awareness. They couldn't be good bystanders. They weren't empowered and taught to be good bystanders. So all of this is happening. I'm realizing something's missing here. And of course, as the universe does, my path crosses with Udit. And Udit says, this is, this is what we're working on. And I had heard, and I had friends in the empowerment self-defense community, but, it really didn't grab my attention enough to really sit down and say, hey, what are you guys doing? I want to hear about it. But Udit did. And that was after a connection that we had through Krav Maga. And I was invited to an incubator where we were sequestered. About 20 women were sequestered in upstate New York. And we just started hammering out ideas on what would the future of empowerment self-defense look like. And so that was really my start into the empowerment self-defense movement. I think that was the week that was the start of me becoming as passionate and as driven about getting empowerment self-defense to as many people. At that time, as many athletes as I possibly could. And then when I retired from coaching, Udit reached out and said, hey, Arlene, I think you'd be perfect to, take the helm and lead PAVE. And it was really one meeting. And I was like, I would love the opportunity. Sounds great. And that's how my work at PAVE started.
It's important to have somebody with your background taking things to the next level, because you understand a whole intricate world that can be improved upon. People are athletes that are challenged and in circumstances where they don't necessarily know, oh, did that just happen? Did somebody just do that? How am I supposed to respond? And they might miss that first opportunity to speak up. But with PAVE and teaching and going into the workplaces and explaining, it puts the responsibility both on the individual and on the owners of the businesses and any organization that you might reach.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, when I'm able to share a story about an athlete, I think it rings on ears differently. I think people can see it so clearly when you talk about an athlete in their prime on an upward trajectory. Something happens to them and then they're derailed and they're not winning. They're not winning like they were, or they're not able to make weight anymore if it's a weight cutting sport, or they just disappear. So it's very clear to see that in their workplace, something happened and it impacted their performance. And then I can make the correlation that this is happening in your workplace. This is happening in the healthcare sector. This is happening in the hospitality sector. This is happening in emergency preparedness. It's happening in every sector.
Exactly. And so this is, you're already answering the question, what does it mean to you to change the culture of violence in the workplace, which is identifying these situations. And maybe you want to expand on, it's not just, it's stemming from the workplace, but expands out to other parts of our lives.
Of course. So I think, PAVE, there's no doubt in my mind, we're going to do a lot of good for the corporation that hires us and the institution, the organization that hires us. We're going to improve their bottom line. We're going to decrease the amount of turnover. We're going to save them on training costs because they don't have to hire new people. We're going to improve productivity and communication and well-being of their employees. We're going to do all that. No doubt in my mind. Okay. But that's my Trojan horse. And I'm glad that that's going to work out great for the corporation. Fantastic. But it is my Trojan horse approach. My idea is we do most of our adult learning at work. Let's impart these skills at work. If it improves things for the company, fantastic. But the individual is going to be empowered with the skill set and use it for the rest of their life. Use it at home. Use it in the grocery store. Use the bystander skills at the farmer's market. I mean, it's the ripple effect is going to be huge, and that's why I'm doing it. Happy to improve the corporation's bottom line, absolutely, but really it's about the individual getting that skill set.
And can you give us an example of what happens in the workplace, more specific, that a tool that somebody might use when their boss says something to them that they don't appreciate?
I mean, the skill set of empowerment, self-defense, and what we call at PAVE human safety skills, being able to set a boundary, that skill can be used from, hey, I can't work this weekend, to, I'm not comfortable in this setting, or, hey, you know what? Every time you guys call me to this meeting, you guys show up 20 minutes late. Can I have a little respect?
Right.
Can you please show up on time? It's just communicating, speaking, sharing your feelings and sharing, creating a culture that allows people to communicate their needs and their expectations. And I think if we can do that, in addition to warn off predatory behavior, right? Because you're always we don't want to turn everything upside down just because there may be toxicity. Our goals with PAVE are not only to, from the bare toxicity in the workplace, to eliminate those things or create at least a conversation around those things. That would be in a sense at the micro level, right? Dealing with microaggressions, to full blown trying to avoid or offset or stop the dominoes from falling, or like we say, disrupt the dominoes of violence as far as sexual assaults or attacks or physical assaults, or maybe even something as horrific as an active shooter situation. If we can improve employees' situational awareness so that they see the indicators before things happen, that's what we're hoping to do. And that's not only going to stay in the workplace, it's going to ripple outside of the workplace as well.
Absolutely. And it's where prevention is key. It comes into play, where we are don't want to be victims. We want to have our eyes open and learn the tools and have them take in the knowledge to prevent the situations from escalating and to know how to roll things back. And maybe you can share this success story, as I like to call them, obviously, about your the new macro program.
So we were asked to speak to a couple of leaders within the city of Oakland, and there was representation from the paramedic and fire department. There was representation from the police department. There was representation from a new program that was just starting called MACRO, Mobile Assistance Responders of Oakland. Okay. So community responders of Oakland. So we gave our presentation on what we felt our skill sets were, how we felt we could improve culture for the city of Oakland. And macro leadership came up and said, listen, we think you'd be the perfect training partner for our responders. Our responders are the answer to police reform. They will be housed under the fire department. So they will not be under the police department. They'll be under the fire department, and they'll respond to low acuity calls. Drunk in public, some domestic violence, sleeper, disoriented person. And we jumped at it. We would love to send you a proposal.
Wow.
I think we could do, and we won the proposal. And so we train those responders on the skill sets that we know are important. We added in some other training that contributed very well, managing your adrenaline, identifying when you're adrenalized, and how to handle that. We created a really nice checklist for how to check in with yourself during the day when you're starting work, how to check in with yourself when you're ending work because the work is heavy. We created a nice framework for partners check-ins because you respond in two. But we put together a really nice program. I'm really proud of that program. And I just received some of the statistics from Macro yesterday, and they have been in the field a couple months now. They've responded to nearly 2,500 calls. That's 2,500 that the police no longer have to go to.
Wow. That's changing the culture right there on the ground and making it a safer place, right there. Yes. That's amazing.
And because Macro is having such success, it's opened up other opportunities in the community for us there. And we have just won a proposal to train what's called the Oakland Parks and Rec Stewards. So these are people who are in the park system program, and they are like the police of the park district. So we'll be training them in August.
That's incredible. I bless you to continue this incredidible work.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
It's so inspiring, and it puts a smile on our faces. I hope everyone whoever's listening to this now, it really sees how much work that there is out there and how it can happen. And
I think it's going to create, not that ESD, in my opinion, ever needed legitimacy. The legitimacy for me is always there. I have always seen how the incredible benefits. But I think if we can then go, look at macro responders have responded to 2,500 calls. They've come home safely every day. They are using our skill set every day. They are de-escalating situations. They are setting boundaries. They are being aware of their surroundings. If this can work there, it can work in your office. It can work in this Girl Scout group. It can work in college. I just think it changes the conversation for us.
Wow, that's great. Let me ask you about your podcast, Disrupting the Dominoes. I've had the privilege to listen to a few of them. So why don't you share with us who you've interviewed, a few stories or about the podcast?
Sure. I hope people can tell from this podcast that, my strength is speaking with people. That's when I can get, my passion across. Sending an email doesn't work for me. Of course we have to do it, but I need FaceTime. I need to be in front of people talking about what PAVE is doing, talking about what ESD empowerment self-defense can do, and the changes that we can make. So the podcast was a no-brainer. Although I was a little nervous about it in the beginning, it really was a no-brainer.
Me too.
Once we started. It's just having conversations and really discussing and talking about the problem. And we've had people discussing problems in the healthcare sector, hospitality sector, the sporting world sector, the emergency preparedness sector. We've had experts in disaster preparedness.
Wow.
We've had the full spectrum, and I've loved having the conversations. We initially also paid homage to the people who have been leading this movement, and we had some really great and honoring conversations, to people who've been pushing this movement forward for 20, 30, 40 years. So it's been great. It was great for me to be able to honor them. But, now as we evolve, we're out there talking to people who have no idea what empowerment self-defense is, but we're discussing that we know it can work, and we know it can make the world a safer place. So,
and you're also creating the partnerships, which, they know that they need you, that they can reach out to PAVE when they need to learn more and to give their staff tools, and they're on the front lines as well. I mean, I listened to one of your podcasts with an owner of a restaurant that you had on a little while ago, and nightclubs and things like that people need to learn the culture of each individual space in order to address it. And through your consultations, and you can enhance that and make their workplace a safer and more productive environment. So, And Arlene, I have one more question for you. Who is your dream person that you want to speak to? This is your question that you asked on your show. I stole it.
Oh man,
so why not?
I think I would like a panel, not just one. But I would love. I'd be happy to sit in front of Michelle Obama. I'd be happy to sit in front of Melinda Gates. I would be happy to sit in front of those two people and say, you have the resources and the outreach and the network that could really make change, and sell them on what we are doing, run them through a week-long training and say, okay, now tell me you're not changed. I know you're changed. So let's do this for everyone.
How can people find out more about you?
I'm going to sound really old right now. We are on a lot of those platforms. I could not name those platforms, but we're on a lot of different platforms. It's Disrupting the Dominoes. And you can catch us where you can watch us and listen, of course, on our YouTube channel. So I'm very comfortable with that one. All the other platforms we're on, I'm sorry, I am not
Absolutely. Well, we'll post that in the show notes as well. All the ways in which people can tune in and hear more about what PAVE Prevention has to offer. And thank you so much, Arlene, for being here with us on the Change the Culture podcast. Thank you to our listeners as well. And we'd love to hear from our listeners of the Change the Culture podcast. You can email me at annie.orenstein@mypower.co.il. That's annie.orenstein@mypower, mypwr.co.il. And we also have a Change the Culture Facebook group where you could share your thoughts and questions and success stories with us. I hope, Arlene, you're welcome to join our Facebook group there, as well as the sandbox for all the ESD professionals that share on that group. And everyone's welcome to catch up on our latest podcasts where we had on the show Judith Siddickman, CEO of My Power, and Samantha Waterman. And we want you to be part of the conversation and be part of the solution. So stay tuned for the next Change the Culture podcast, where we will hear more from professionals in the fields of ESD from around the world. So thank you, everyone.